Good day. Dr. Tom Preston, head coach of Full Circle Coaching and Consulting, here with you again. Another fireside chat. I like the theme, so I decided to stay with it for this entire program. Today I want to talk to you about team, which is a really important construct in most businesses, particularly in a chiropractic office. The old saying, the old acronym, together everyone achieves more, could not be more true. But I want to, before we get into all of the details about recruiting your ideal team, and again, I want to use that word carefully, recruit versus hire, and we'll talk a lot about that as we go through this. But a premise I want you to go back to is all of this is going to be based upon your core values and your definition of success. Because I have coached some offices that don't have any obvious team members. They have virtual team members, or everything is done online with respect to scheduling and payments and stuff, and so they don't need a front desk type person to be there with them. Other offices I've coached have like 12 or 15 staff. So again, there's no right or wrong way to live a life. There's no right or wrong way to run your business or practice chiropractic in this example, but there's the most optimal way for you. And so I'd like you to be really reflecting and thinking about that before we go into this module, because there's assumptions that people make that, oh, well, when I get here, I should just hire a team member. Now, there are some rules of thumb that have been well established in the chiropractic profession over the years. Generally speaking, you can see up to 60 patient visits per week on your own. Many offices will do that if they have a vision for a smaller volume practice. And so, 50 to 60 visits per week, you can commonly do that on your own. That's only like, say, 10 or 12 a day. And you don't necessarily need to endure the expense of a team member if that is your vision of success. But once you get over that, it's commonly believed, again, it's a belief, so you need to address that and see if it's true for you, but it's commonly believed that you should have a team member in order to really expand and grow. The next jumping off point that's commonly talked about in the profession is when you've gone up to more in the 150, maybe even 160 range. At that point, that's where you might even want to consider getting a second team member, because that may be a glass ceiling that you're hitting relative to having that one team member trying to manage as much as they do. So those are just very loose rules of thumb. I know there was an era of my practice where I saw 250, 275 patient visits a week with just one part-time staff. So again, it's all about your ideals and your definition of success that comes from that. But having said all of that, we're going to make the contention or the assumption or the presumption that in fact you do want to work with a team. Working with a team is a lot of fun. It's great that you don't an island unto yourself. You actually have other people to bounce ideas off of and to help support you and challenge you, quite frankly, in order to be the best version of yourself you can be. And as we go into some of the exercises we're going to do, if you run the numbers, you can see how unbelievably profitable having a team member is. They're like geese that are laying golden eggs. They're making you money on a daily basis. How could you not appreciate them? How could you not compensate them, very well as a result? So again, as a starting part of the module, you'll see some questions relative to team members. Do I want any? If I do, how many do I want? What's your vision look like for that? And that's a great starting place to, as we stated earlier, in order to go from. So making the presumption again that you do want a staff, I want to talk to you about recruiting a staff versus hiring. Hiring by its very nature is designed to be looking for the best person that's available at the time that you happen to be looking. Okay, but that is totally contentious upon the database of people you got to draw from. And if you haven't got a great group of prospects or options at the time, you might end up with a really crappy staff member, team member. And that's not wise, that's not great, that won't help. So I want to bring up the concept of recruiting. Recruiting is very different. Recruiting is about creating a profile of the person that you want to bring in, the outcomes they must achieve, and many of the other things we're going to talk about in a few minutes, and then going out and finding that person in the world. Okay? So it's not about the best prospects available at the time, which is hiring. It's about going out and recruiting your most ideal person. Okay? And so I would offer that recruiting never ends. Certainly we're talking about it maybe at this stage of an expansion phase of your business, or maybe in the early startup phase of your business, and you're looking for the first person. But even if you've got staff been with you for 25 years, I beg you to never ever stop recruiting. Because what happens when you're recruiting is you're finding great talent, you're going to vet them, you're going to interview them, you're going to know that they're a good fit, but you might not have a space for them at the time. And so I've used this strategy for years very successfully. And to the degree that you say to them, look, you're just a really great fit, but I just don't have an opportunity right now. But the very next time I need to replace somebody or expand, you're going to be one of the first people I call. Would it be okay if I stayed in touch? Would it be okay if I kept your resume on file? And I've never had anybody say no, either, to me personally or to any of the hundreds of clients I've shared this strategy with. So really, if you look at it, it's kind of like in sports. Many sporting events or sports in general have a team effort. And if you think about a team, commonly there is your starters and there's your bench. Why is it in business we haven't addressed this? Why is it in business that we don't have our starters and our bench? And here's the benefit of having a bench, right? They're already pre-vetted, they're already enrolled in the vision, the idea, the concept, the mission. You just don't have space for them right now. What it does for the starters, it takes a little pressure off them. Lets them know that, wow, you know what, if I'm embraced in the mission, I want to help fulfill the mission, but maybe there's life changes that come up. I mean, children that move, spouses whose careers change and they may have transitions in terms of where they live. Who knows, there may be, heaven forbid, the illness or accidents that happen. And if this person is really as connected to the mission as you want them to be, they might even have a sense of guilt about taking time away or considering, not being a part of the team anymore. So that's a great pressure relief valve for them. But on a bigger scale too, it also keeps the saw sharp, so to speak, from a Stephen Covey standpoint, right? Because it allows the starters to know that, hey, you know what? There are people that would love to do what I'm doing, that would love to be a part of this team and have been vetted and ready to go. I want to be sure that I'm bringing my A game every day. And I think that that's a great motivator for them as well, to stay sharp and to bring their best self forward on a daily basis. So never ever stop recruiting is kind of the hallmark. So how is it that we recruit? What are the steps? What's the process? Well, as we said, we start out by understanding that we want someone, and then we look at the psychographic and demographic analysis of who this person is. In terms of who they are physically, where do they hang out, where do they play, where do they pray, where might they be working already. Let's hear a little bit about their socioeconomic status. Let's hear a little bit about their education status. Let's hear a little bit about where they are in their journey of life relative to their family commitments, and so on and so forth. The more thoroughly you can see this person in your mind's eye, psychographically, demographically, the clearer it's going to be, the more you're going to recognize them when they come across your desk or across your path, okay? So starting out with psychographic demographic analysis, now what we want to move into is what we call an outcomes assessment. What is it that this person's going to do in your business that's of value? What is it you're going to exchange your hard-earned dollars for and give to them in exchange for? And again, this is not about job responsibilities or job descriptions. That's like 30 years ago, right? This is about outcomes. What outcomes must they achieve to be great at the role? Okay? And that's a very big distinction here because, say, a job responsibility would be, to answer the phone. But an outcome would be clearly stated that you answer the phone by the fourth ring with a smile on your face every time and say very clearly, Preston's Family Chiropractic, Nancy speaking, how may I be of service? Really clearly defined outcome that they must achieve. You know and they know whether they're actually achieving them or not. And so it takes management, it makes management a whole lot easier because you don't have to be worrying and wondering about what they're up to. As a byproduct of the outcomes, you can tell, and you create accountability systems, of course, to ensure that they are, achieving the outcomes. It makes management a whole lot easier. The step in this process is you also want them to know what's in it for them to be a part of your team. So it's something called a UHP, or a unique hiring proposition. What are the benefits to being a part of this team? Is it very fair exchange models? Is it X numbers of weeks of holidays? Is it the opportunity to grow and expand and take seminars? Is it the opportunity to be supported relative to getting some mentoring or coaching on the job? Is it about bonus structure and profit sharing? What are the benefits? Because if you're recruiting good people, there's lots of other places they could be working. And so you want to be sure that you're showing them clearly what's in it for them, all right? You also, as you're creating the structure for the recruiting process, and notice we haven't even gone outside of our own minds yet or outside of our own offices, right? We're creating the structure. We're doing the due diligence to find the right person before we ever go out and start the recruiting process, okay? So another step is to write the contract. And certainly if you're involved in any sort of a coaching program like this, you'll have access to a possible template. You don't need to recreate the wheel. But you definitely want to have a contract and lay out all of the ifs, ands, and buts around the structure of the contract in terms of the compensation model. You want to look at the time involved. You want to look at the office policies. I would offer that outcomes assessments would be like Appendix A, to this contract, so that you're getting clear about who this person is, what outcomes you want them to achieve, what's in it for them to come and work with you. You want to create a contract, and certainly a really important part of that contract is looking at compensation models. This is something that's very poorly done in business, particularly in small business, particularly in healthcare, particularly in chiropractic. I would say that probably the worst way to pay someone is hourly. It may be okay in the very early stages of a relationship to pay them hourly, but it's really backwards psychology. Because what you're doing is you're saying the longer and slower you do this task, the less efficiently you do this task, the more money I'm going to give you. Well, that's just backwards psychology, gang, right? So if you do choose to start them on an hourly basis, you want to do your research, you want to look at your market analysis and see what's going on in the field around you, in the geographic region that you're in, because it varies from region to region. But you also want to look at how much revenue they're going to be making for you. Again, I referenced that your team members should be geese laying golden eggs. These people are making you money. How much money? And the way to do this exercise is to look at how many services could you do on your own if you're answering the phone and you're booking appointments and you're taking money, but you're doing the diagnosis, you're doing the adjusting, you're doing all the admin work. How many people per hour could you see? And I don't know, but let's just pick a number of say 4. Okay, 4 an hour. But if you've got a team member there who's doing all of that other admin stuff and supporting you so that you just need to do the doctor stuff, wow, you could probably go to 8, 12, 16 people an hour. I mean, it depends upon your vision of success and so on. But let's just say that it's even 8. Well, now you've doubled your capacity, right? And if you look at the average fee for service that you're getting in your office, let's just pick a nice easy number and say it's $50. Well, if you're going to see another 4 people per hour, potentially, let's talk about that in a sec, 4 people per hour at $50 a service, well, that's another $200 per hour that you could or will be making with a team member there that you wouldn't be making if they weren't there. So just think, you could pay them $100 an hour, which you probably don't need to, but you could pay them $100 an hour and be doubling your money. That's a good business move. Anytime I can write a check for something that I can double my money on, make 100% profit on, man, I'll write those checks all day, as should you be. Okay? So that just gives you a frame of reference. And one of the things I hear a lot is how undervalued team members feel. They don't get told enough how special, talented, and fabulous and gorgeous they are. They don't get appreciated enough financially. And if you do this math right from the get-go, you'll know how amazing they are. Now notice I said possibility, because if you're only seeing 4 an hour and it's a possibility you could grow to 8 an hour, obviously you want to use that as a template, as a possibility, but you need to track and ensure that you're actually doing that to make sure that you're going to be making a good return on your money for the money you're investing in your team members. So obviously this is part of the tracking part of the stats that we talked about on another module in this particular program. Okay? So now that we've got all this due diligence and back work done, now what you want to do is you want to go ideally to your network, okay? And you want to write up what we call a one-pager. So a lot of times people think about one-pagers relative to, say, real estate, where somebody will make a one-pager on a house and give it all the highlights and features of the house. Well, this is like that. It's like all of the highlights of your particular opportunity. It's like an ad, but maybe a little bit downplayed to a traditional ad that's going to go out to Kijiji or something, okay, or Craigslist or wherever you put your ads, okay? So, and you want to send this out to all of your business contacts in the geographic region, in healthcare or otherwise, and say, hey, Bob, you're someone I admire and respect in my life, a friend of mine and business colleague, whatever they are, and I wanted to enroll you in helping me fill a new position. I'm recruiting for X position. In this case, maybe we'll use the example of front desk staff. And this is exactly the person that I'm looking for that's described in this one-pager. I know there's at least one person you can think of. I'll follow up in the coming days to a week to see who that person is. Please shoot me a note as soon as you can and let me know who this person is, and CC me on their contact data so that I can reach out to them. All right. Now, if you get some good leads from your network, that's great, because birds of a feather tend to flock together. But if you don't, then you're going to take that one page, you're going to summarize it down into an ad, and you're going to, put it out to the world. Okay. So again, one way or the other, either going through your network, which is more ideal, or going out into the big picture world, you want to be looking for, attracting some prospects. Now, ideally, I think of this one doctor in Seattle, Washington area that I was working with years ago who put out an ad. He had 185 resumes in under 4 hours. It was like, it was like overwhelming to read all of these resumes. So a step you want to also create is something we call rules-based decision making, or in this case particularly the rules for hiring in your office. What are the rules you have around hiring? Who is this person you're looking for? You can go back to your psychographic demographic analysis. You can use that as an S point. Is this person male or female? Is this person college educated or not? Is this person currently employed or not? Is this person got at least 2 years experience in the field you're hiring in, which is one of the rules in my business, to ensure that you got somebody with experience. And again, you lay out these different rules so that when you get to these resumes, if you were looking for someone who's college educated and they're clearly not in the resume, you can toss it. If you can look at the resume and see that they don't have any experience in the field, you can toss it. And this way you can filter through the resume process and get to the real gems. Once you've got the gems, you want to go through the interview process. And you want to start with phone interviews. Okay? Because a lot of time in business, particularly in healthcare, particularly in chiropractic, these people are on the phone. So you want to get a sense of how they interact with the phone. Plus, you also want to save yourself some time. It's awkward sometimes doing interviews. And if this person isn't a good fit and you're on the phone, it's way less stressful for them and for you to just say, hey, you know what? Thanks for your time, but I don't think this is the right position for you. Schedule 15 minutes. And there's a series of great questions you should be asking around the phone interview. If they pass the phone interview, then you want to move them on to an in-person interview. And this is a first in-person interview. Really important that you have 2 people there at the interview. Okay, you and somebody else, significant other, dear friend, business colleague, other team member if you're just expanding an existing team. And you're going to be asking questions and really locking in on who they are, watching their nonverbal, watching their interaction. And the other person is going to be writing down answers and also getting a perspective. My favorite way to do this is where after they leave, and I would book 20 to 30 minutes for these in-person interviews. After they leave, you give them a score out of 100. 0 is they're like the worst candidate ever. 100 is like you couldn't be better. And get you to do it and get the other person to do it without talking about it. And then from that space, you can compare and get somewhat of a subjectively objective analysis for who you think the best fit is. Once you've gone through that, you get your best candidates. You do second interviews off-site. Okay, take them to dinner or something and talk it down and see how they are in a different environment and get to know them as human beings. Great questions to ask is to put them into a somewhat imagined stressful position. And this is, again, well laid out in the module because people can actually fake interviews. They can be on their best behavior. But if you stress them and say, well, how would you handle this stressful situation? Like a rule in your office is to payment of fees when fees are due and somebody doesn't want to pay. How would they handle that? How have they handled a situation like that in the past in another business? See how well they network information from other parts of different careers they've been in. And then once they've got you an answer, ask them again. Ask them, well, okay, give me another example of that. Push them a little bit and see how they respond because it's a great test of character. Ultimately, though, what you want to end up with is your best candidate. You offer them the contract, get them to review it, review the outcomes assessments with them, and ultimately welcome your new team member to the family, to the tribe that is your growing business. Now, there's ways to inspire people. There's ways to build and enhance the team. But I think at this point, we're going to save that for another module. So again, thank you for joining me. Remember, we're recruiting, we're not hiring, and we're looking for the best candidates that we can. Do all your due diligence first, as we laid out in this module, and you'll have the best results that you can when you're looking for attracting that right team member who's going to help support your mission and help you expand your expression to the world. Thanks for your time.